Chapter 1: The Queen's Vanity and Snow White's Innocence. In a realm shrouded by mountains and deep forests, the kingdom of Verdant was ruled by a queen, whose beauty was renowned across the lands. Queen Ravenna's heart, however, was as cold as the jeweled mirror she consulted daily. This magical artifact, encased in gilded gold, had the power to speak truths. Each day, Queen Ravenna would stand before it and inquire, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all?" For years, the mirror assured her of her unrivaled beauty, which satisfied her vanity. However, as Snow White, the daughter of the late king and stepdaughter to Ravenna, grew from a child into a young woman, her beauty began to eclipse that of her stepnurse. Snow White's kind heart and gentle spirit made her beloved by all the kingdom's inhabitants, contrasting sharply with the queen's harsh rule. Chapter 2: Snow White's Flight into the Forest. One fateful day, the mirror finally revealed to Queen Ravenna that Snow White had surpassed her in beauty. Enraged and unable to bear the thought of someone else being more beautiful, the queen summoned her huntsman. She deceitfully commanded him to take Snow White deep into the forest and eliminate her, handing him a jeweled box to bring back her heart as proof. The huntsman, loyal to the late king, but fearful of the queen's wrath, took Snow White into the woods. However, moved by her pleas for mercy and realizing her innocence, he could not bring himself to harm her. Instead, he warned her of the queen's evil intentions, and urged her to flee deeper into the forest and never return. Left alone, Snow White wandered through the dense underbrush, terrified and exhausted, until she stumbled upon the quaint cottage of the 7 dwarfs. Chapter 3: The 7 Dwarfs and a New Home. In the heart of the forest, the cottage Snow White found belonged to 7 dwarfs who worked as miners, extracting precious gems from the earth. Each dwarf had a unique characteristic that defined him. Doc was the leader and the wisest, Grumpy was always irritable, but had a kind heart. Happy was perpetually joyful, Sleepy was always tired, Bashful was shy, Sneezy had a chronic sneeze due to dust, and Dopey was endearingly clumsy. Upon discovering Snow White asleep in their home, after initial shock, the dwarfs were quickly enchanted by her innocence and grace. They agreed to offer her shelter in exchange for her help around the house. Snow White gratefully accepted, finding solace in the warmth and safety of the dwarfs' home. She took on the responsibilities of cooking, cleaning, and caring for their cottage, forming a bond of friendship and family with the dwarfs. Chapter 4: The Queen's Wrath and the Poisoned Apple. Back at the palace, Queen Ravenna's rage knew no bounds when her mirror revealed that Snow White was still alive and now considered the fairest in the land. In a desperate bid to reclaim her title, the queen crafted a dark plan. Disguising herself as an old hag, she prepared a poisoned apple that would put anyone who ate it into an eternal sleep. Armed with her deadly creation, she made her way to the dwarf's cottage. With cunning and deceit, she convinced Snow White to take a bite of the apple, claiming it was enchanted to grant eternal youth. Snow White, trusting and unsuspecting, bit into the apple and collapsed, falling into a deep, death-like slumber. Chapter 5: The Dwarf's Despair and the Prince's Quest. The 7 dwarfs came home at dusk to find Snow White lying motionless, a half-eaten apple by her side. Realizing the gravity of the situation, they were stricken with grief. After many attempts to revive her, they concluded that Snow White was under a spell too powerful to break. Unwilling to bury her, as she still appeared so lifelike and beautiful, they built a glass coffin, and placed it in a clearing within the forest, where they kept vigil day and night, hoping for a miracle. News of the beautiful princess in the glass coffin spread across the lands, eventually reaching a prince who had once met Snow White at a royal gathering. Captivated by her beauty and the tragic tale, the prince set out on a journey to find her. Upon arriving, he was moved by the sight of the grieving dwarfs, and Snow White's serene expression. Believing in the power of true love's kiss, he asked the dwarfs for permission to kiss her. With their hesitant consent, he kissed Snow White, breaking the spell and awakening her. Chapter 6: A New Dawn and the Queen's Fate. Awakened from her cursed slumber, Snow White was overjoyed to see the dwarfs, and the prince by her side. Grateful for their care and love, she embraced them all. As for Queen Ravenna, when she consulted her mirror once more, and discovered that Snow White was still the fairest and now truly alive, her heart filled with fury and despair. In her last desperate attempt to eliminate Snow White, she stormed into the forest during a great storm, but was struck by lightning, meeting her end as the forces of nature reclaimed her wickedness. The kingdom rejoiced at the news of Snow White's revival, and the queen's demise. The prince and Snow White were soon married in a grand celebration that united the kingdom. They ruled wisely and kindly, bringing peace and prosperity to the land. Snow White and the prince, along with the 7 dwarfs, lived happily ever after, forever cherishing the bonds that had brought them together.